The phone buzzed at 2 a.m., slicing through the silence. Ethan, 35, stared at the screen. David's text glowed with a confession that gutted him. "I'm sorry, Ethan. I've been seeing someone. We need to talk." 8 years of marriage, shared dinners, quiet promises, a life built on trust, dissolved in a single message. Ethan's chest tightened, his breath shallow. He sat on the edge of the bed, the weight of betrayal pinning him in place. In their small California town, where whispers traveled faster than truth, this was a bomb waiting to detonate. He reread the text, hoping he'd misread it. David, his husband, a charming lawyer who could talk his way out of anything, had been distant lately. Late nights at the office, clipped conversations. Ethan, a high school history teacher, had chalked it up to stress. But now the signs screamed. The unanswered calls, the excuses, the way David's eyes avoided his. Ethan's fingers trembled as he typed a reply, then deleted it. What was there to say? The man he'd built a life with had chosen someone else. By morning, Ethan hadn't slept. He drove to the school, his routine a lifeline. The classroom, usually a refuge, felt suffocating. Students droned through presentations while Ethan's mind churned. Who was it? Why? He pictured David with someone new, laughing, touching, sharing moments that were supposed to be theirs. The bell rang, snapping him back. A colleague, Sarah, lingered at his desk. "You okay, Ethan? You look like you've seen a ghost." He forced a smile, muttering, "Just tired." But her concern only sharpened his isolation. David was waiting when Ethan got home. He stood in the kitchen, hands in his pockets, his usual confidence replaced by something brittle. "It's not what you think," David started, voice low. "It just happened. With a coworker. I didn't mean for it to go this far." Ethan's stomach twisted. "How long?" he asked, voice flat. David hesitated. "A few months." The words landed like a second blow. Months of lies, while Ethan planned anniversaries and ignored the cracks. "Who is he?" Ethan pressed, his voice rising despite himself. David's silence was answer enough. "It's Tom, isn't it?" Ethan had met Tom, David's colleague, at a firm dinner. Polished, ambitious, always too close. David didn't deny it. "I'm sorry," he said again, stepping forward. Ethan backed away, the space between them a chasm. "Don't," he snapped. "Just don't." The argument spiraled. David begged for forgiveness, promising to end it, to fix things. But Ethan's trust was shattered. "You think sorry fixes this?" he shouted. "You think I can just forget?" David's eyes glistened, but Ethan felt no pity, only rage, and beneath it, a deeper ache. He'd spent years molding himself to fit this life, this town, this marriage. He'd buried parts of himself to avoid the whispers, the judgment. And now, David's betrayal unearthed something Ethan had long suppressed. His own unspoken desires, locked away since he was a teenager, terrified of what it meant to be different, in a place that demanded conformity. That night, Ethan couldn't stay in the house. He grabbed his keys and drove, the road blurring through his anger. He ended up at a bar on the edge of town, a place he'd never dared enter. The neon sign flickered, promising escape. Inside, the hum of conversation and clinking glasses drowned out his thoughts. He ordered a whiskey, the burn grounding him. At the bar, a stranger caught his eye. Ryan, 28, a painter with a quick laugh and a guarded edge. "Rough night?" Ryan asked, sliding onto the stool beside him. Ethan nodded, unsure why he didn't turn away. They talked, Ryan's openness disarming. He spoke of his art, his move from Chicago after a messy breakup, his life as an openly gay man unafraid of who he was. Ethan envied that freedom. Ryan's words, sharp and honest, stirred something in Ethan, a spark he hadn't felt in years. When Ryan scribbled his number on a napkin, Ethan's pulse quickened. He pocketed it, the paper heavy with possibility. Driving home, Ethan felt the weight of David's betrayal collide with a new, dangerous question. What if he stopped hiding who he was? Ethan clutched Ryan's napkin in his pocket, its edges worn from restless fingers. Days after David's confession, the betrayal still burned. But Ryan's number was a quiet rebellion, a lifeline Ethan wasn't sure he deserved. He sat in his car outside a coffee shop, heart racing. He'd texted Ryan on impulse, half expecting no reply. But Ryan had agreed to meet, and now Ethan faced a choice: walk away or step toward something unknown. Inside, Ryan was already there, sketching in a notebook. His presence was magnetic, his ease a stark contrast to Ethan's knotted nerves. "Didn't think you'd show," Ryan said, closing the notebook with a grin. Ethan managed a shrug. His voice caught. "Didn't think I would either." They ordered coffee. The small talk, a shield against the weight of why Ethan was there. Ryan's questions were gentle but probing, about teaching, about life in this stifling town. Ethan dodged the personal, but Ryan's openness pulled him in. "Chicago was too much after my ex," Ryan said, his tone light but eyes distant. "He cheated, left me picking up the pieces." Ethan's chest tightened. Ryan's pain mirrored his own. The conversation shifted. Ryan spoke of art shows, of living unapologetically, of nights in bars where he didn't have to hide. Ethan listened, captivated by a life so unlike his own, one unbound by fear of judgment. "You ever feel like you're pretending?" Ryan asked suddenly, his gaze steady. Ethan froze. The question cut too close, unearthing years of silence, of swallowing his truth to fit in. "Sometimes," he admitted, voice low. Ryan didn't push, but his quiet nod felt like permission to breathe. They met again days later, this time at a park bench by the town's edge. Ryan brought sketches, his hands moving as he explained his work. Ethan felt a pull, not just to Ryan but to the freedom he embodied. Their talks grew longer, texts more frequent, late-night messages about music, dreams, anything but David. Yet David lingered. He was still at home, pleading for a second chance, his apologies a constant hum. "I ended it with Tom," David said one night, voice raw. "I want us to work." Ethan wanted to believe him, but each word felt hollow, drowned by the spark Ryan had ignited. At school, whispers started. A colleague noticed Ethan's distraction. Another saw him with Ryan at the coffee shop. "Be careful," Sarah warned, her tone kind but pointed. "People talk." Ethan brushed it off, but the weight of the town's eyes pressed harder. He wasn't ready to name what he felt for Ryan, but it was there, electric, undeniable. One evening, Ryan invited him to an art gallery an hour away. Ethan hesitated, then said yes. The drive was quiet, Ryan's laughter filling the gaps. At the gallery, Ryan's world unfolded. Bold colors, raw emotion. Ethan saw himself in those paintings, a man trapped, but yearning. When their hands brushed, Ethan didn't pull away. Ryan's touch lingered, a question unspoken. Ethan's phone buzzed with another text from Ryan, a simple, "Missed you at the gallery today." The words sent a jolt through him, both thrilling and terrifying. For weeks their connection had grown. Stolen moments at coffee shops, late-night drives. Ryan's unguarded laughter pulling Ethan toward a truth he'd buried for years. But the small California town they lived in was closing in, its whispers sharper now. Ethan felt the weight of every glance, every hushed conversation at school. He was unraveling, caught between Ryan's pull and David's desperate attempts to hold on. David was relentless. At home, he shadowed Ethan, his apologies laced with urgency. "I messed up, Ethan, but I love you," he said one evening, blocking the doorway as Ethan tried to leave. "We can fix this." Ethan's jaw tightened. David's affair with Tom still stung, each promise tainted by months of lies. "You don't get to decide that," Ethan snapped, pushing past him. But doubt gnawed at him. 8 years of marriage wasn't nothing. Shared routines, quiet nights, a life he'd fought to keep stable. Could he throw it away for something as uncertain as Ryan? At school, the rumors escalated. A parent cornered Ethan after class, voice low but accusing. "I hear you've been distracted. My kid needs a teacher who's focused." Ethan's stomach churned. He mumbled an apology, but the principal called him in later. "People are talking, Ethan," she said, her tone clipped. "Keep your personal life out of this school." The warning was clear. His job was on the line. He nodded, but his thoughts were with Ryan, his ease, his honesty, the way he lived without shame. Ethan envied that freedom, but fear kept him tethered. What would the town think if they knew? What would his family say? Ryan sensed the shift. At their next meeting, a quiet diner outside town, he was quieter. His usual spark dimmed. "You're pulling back," Ryan said, stirring his coffee. "Is it me?" Ethan shook his head, but the lie felt heavy. "It's complicated," he said. Ryan's gaze hardened. "It's not, you're scared." The truth stung. Ryan had his own scars. His ex's betrayal had left him wary, but he'd chosen to live openly, despite the cost. Ethan, still hiding, felt the gap between them widen. David seized the moment. "I hear you've been seen with some artist," he said one night, his voice sharp with accusation. "Is that who you're choosing over us?" Ethan's pulse raced. David's manipulation twisted the knife, playing on Ethan's guilt, his fear of being exposed. "This isn't about him," Ethan said, but the words felt weak. David stepped closer, his tone softening. "You're not like that, Ethan. You're not him." The implication cut deep, echoing the shame Ethan had carried since he was a teen, suppressing who he was to fit in. The tension peaked when a coworker mentioned seeing Ethan and Ryan together at the diner. By the next day, the gossip had spread. Students whispered, parents sent emails. Ethan's inbox filled with vague complaints about his conduct. He sat at his desk, staring at Ryan's latest text. "I can't keep waiting for you to decide." Ethan's chest ached. He wanted Ryan, wanted the life he represented, but the cost was suffocating. His job, his family, his place in this town. The walls were closing in, and Ethan felt the choice looming: hide forever, or risk everything for a truth he could no longer deny. Ethan's phone lay silent, Ryan's last text unanswered. "I can't keep waiting for you to decide." The words haunted him, a mirror to his indecision. The small California town buzzed with gossip, his colleagues' sideways glances, parents' pointed emails, the principal's warning still ringing in his ears. Ethan, 35, felt the walls of his carefully built life collapsing. David's betrayal had cracked the foundation, and Ryan's presence had exposed the fault lines. Ethan's hidden truth, the part of himself he'd buried to survive in a place that judged. His mother, Margaret, called that morning, her voice tight. "We need to talk. Now." Ethan drove to her house, dread pooling in his chest. She stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, her silence heavier than any words. "People are talking," she said finally. "They say you're with someone. A man." Her tone carried years of expectation, the weight of a community that prized conformity. Ethan's throat tightened. "It's not what you think," he said, but the lie tasted bitter. Margaret's eyes narrowed. "This isn't you, Ethan. You need to fix this. For your family. For God." The words cut deeper than David's affair, slicing into the shame Ethan had carried since he was a teenager, hiding his attraction to men to avoid her disapproval. He left without responding, her words chasing him. At home, David was waiting, his apologies now tinged with desperation. "I know you're seeing him," David said, voice low. "But we can still save this. Don't throw us away." Ethan's anger flared. "You threw us away," he snapped. "You and Tom." David flinched but didn't back down. "You're confused, Ethan. You're not like that." The echo of Margaret's judgment stung, as if they'd conspired to keep Ethan locked in a version of himself he no longer recognized. Ryan was slipping away. Ethan drove to the diner where they'd last met, hoping to find him, but the booth was empty. He texted, called. Nothing. Ryan's silence was a rebuke, a reminder of his own hesitation. Ethan had felt alive with Ryan, his openness a beacon, but fear had kept Ethan tethered. Now, alone in his car, the weight of that fear crushed him. He'd lost Ryan, maybe David too, and the town's scrutiny was relentless. A parent's email landed in his inbox, accusing him of inappropriate behavior. The principal called again, her tone final. "We can't have this distraction, Ethan. Sort it out, or we'll have to let you go." That night, Ethan sat in his car outside the bar where he'd met Ryan. The neon sign flickered, mocking his indecision. He replayed their moments, Ryan's laugh, his sketches, the brush of their hands. Then Margaret's voice, David's pleas, the town's whispers. He was suffocating, torn between the safety of a lie and the truth that could cost him everything. Ethan gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. He couldn't keep hiding. Not from Ryan, not from himself. The breaking point had come, and he had to choose. Stay silent and lose himself, or speak his truth and face the fallout. Ethan sat across from his mother, Margaret, his hands trembling but his voice steady. "I'm gay," he said, the words slicing through years of silence. Margaret's face froze, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You don't mean that," she whispered, shaking her head. "You're confused." Ethan didn't waver. "I'm not. This is who I am." The truth, spoken aloud, felt like shedding a heavy chain. Margaret stood, her voice breaking. "I can't accept this." She walked out, leaving Ethan alone with the sting of rejection, but also a strange lightness. For the first time, he wasn't hiding. Back home, David was packing. His affair with Tom had ended, but the damage was irreparable. "I thought we could fix this," David said, his voice hollow. Ethan shook his head. "You broke us. But I'm done pretending." David's shoulders slumped, and he left without another word, his absence a quiet consequence of his betrayal. Ethan felt no triumph, only relief. The life they'd built was a lie, and letting it go was the first step toward something real. The town's judgment hadn't eased. Whispers followed Ethan at school, parents' complaints, colleagues' cold stares. The principal called him in again. "We've had more concerns," she said. "This isn't working." Ethan didn't argue. He resigned that day, the decision both terrifying and freeing. The job had been his anchor. but it was also a cage, tying him to a place that demanded he shrink himself. He packed his car, leaving behind the small California town that had defined him for too long. Ethan tracked down Ryan, finding him at an art studio an hour away. Ryan was packing for Seattle, his own fresh start. "I didn't think you'd come," Ryan said, his voice cautious but warm. Ethan took a breath. "I was scared, but I'm here now. I'm out." Ryan's eyes softened, a flicker of his old spark returning. They talked for hours, not about love, but about truth. Ryan's healing from his ex, Ethan's choice to live openly. When they hugged goodbye, it was without promises, only mutual respect. Ryan's path was his own, and Ethan's was just beginning. He moved to San Francisco, a city alive with possibility. There, he found a teaching job at a community center, one that welcomed him as he was. He joined a support group, sharing his story with others who'd faced rejection and found strength. The first time he introduced himself as a gay man, his voice didn't shake. Margaret hadn't called, and the silence hurt, but Ethan held on to hope, not for her acceptance, but for his own future. He walked the city's streets, each step lighter, carrying a quiet resolve to live as himself, no matter the cost. If this story touched you, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell. More stories are coming that will move you, inspire you, and challenge the way you see your own journey. Every story matters, and each one brings us closer to who we are meant to become.